Chapter 41. The Second Resignation. Lance and Pirabi and the Isaiah's Vision. Around this time, the process of finding a new Parabdi had come to take place. As the Jinns knew, life on Earth had become quite stale. Brutus had protested this mission and claimed that this was not the right time to bring in a Parabdi and needed to wait till things calmed down. Melindel explained that the office of the said Nexus cannot be sustained, and the very stability it keeps will crumble if taken too seriously. Brutus then turns his back, pouting about this. After some meetings with the candidates over the course of the days, Melindel and Sophronium elders voted in Lance, as he was one of the few good options they had. Lance had been a pure Abdi with much spunk and sass. Lance had been the pure Abdi in training to rescue the kobolds in Kebsuda from that compound years back. Brutus did not exactly do too well with Lance at first. Brutus hated Lance and still chided him about freeing the kobolds from the compound. Brutus claimed that they needed order and had only gotten themselves in trouble since they left. Lance and Brutus had debated for a while, and they both agreed to a compromise. Now Lance was one to value freedom and knew over-responsibility had a sacrificial nature that only created burdens for the ones making sacrifices and became an unnecessary annoyance of intrusions and debts to those under the sacrifices. Brutus, on the other hand, had sought for another order that would keep stability at all costs. Brutus rejected all of Lance's ideas until he suggested an order where the mortals would be free from all responsibility and taken care of by the authorities, as opposed to the bossy authorities making demands and punishing weaknesses. After the inauguration, Melindel runs into a hooded figure who needs to talk to him immediately. Melindel figures out that this figure is Mortanius, who has come in with some more grim tidings. Mortanius asks Melindel if he remembers the vision of the orb, including the tonsillectomy, the praying zombie, and the hospital room. Melindel had to think for a second and knew exactly what this man was speaking of. Mortanius explains that the vision of the hospital room has already come to pass 2 years ago. Melindel immediately understood about the cousin's grandmother who had passed away while the charge was still at the tech school. Melindel asks if something is coming. Mortanius grimly nods and explains that the fulfillment of the vision of the tonsillectomy is coming to pass very soon. Melindel immediately understands what this is about. Mortanius explains that he will walk with the charge, and this may awaken in him what was so long dormant. Mortanius explains that everything will happen in a similar chronological fashion. as the dreams had happened, but the fallen warrior is not going to die in vain. On the night before a new school year began, after Lance was inaugurated into office, Aeneas had the following vision. Some people living in ancient Rome were under this oppressive ruler. These people in Rome did not feel at home in this country despite knowing no different. One night, this family escapes on a mysterious boat, heading to the Americas, and end up in the present-day Soda Pond, where everything looks exactly the same today, only in a Native American style. In fact, all the same houses are present, exactly like they are in the modern day, but have a decor from the late 80s. Then these people end up in the same mysterious basement of some new house. This basement feels like a home, similar to the home they had not entered in since a small child. Aeneas notices that this house looks strangely familiar, and notices this resembling the Charge's residency at the house when he was small. The return semester. With the new school year, Milo was less into school. Milo took a class on geology, non-Western art history, and modern architecture. Now Milo was an art major. Within this first week, Milo was adjusting quite faster. Now that Milo had faced his demons, he was more comfortable having a life outside of Susuego. Frankly, Milo really did not care to be at school, and was still haunted by the meaningless memories from the previous year, the summer classes, and the way he was almost manipulated the year before. About 2 weeks after school began, Uncle Giorgio got diagnosed with a morbid cancer prognosis. Milo knew something strange was going on that day when Aunt Diane called for Ray during the day. Now Ray had been on another golf trip before a whole week, and Aunt Diane never called in the afternoon or the evening. With the diagnosis, Milo started to believe in some type of personal God he could pray to. That weekend, Lydia, Emma, and Emma came home in order to visit Uncle Giorgio and cheer Rob up. At this time, Milo started listening to the Harry Potter series again, which he had not read together since his post-senior summer. Milo developed some reappreciation for the Catholic Church after Rob had taken him to a Carmelite to ask the nun for prayers. As it was, Milo had wanted some higher power to believe in, even if it was not organized religion necessarily. Rob told the nuns that Milo had been bothered by televangelists, and Pat Robertson and Jerry Falwell in particular. This nun agreed with Milo's disagreements with these televangelists. By this time, a slightly better prognosis for Uncle Giorgio was given, and he was put on treatments. Milo had thought extensively about 5 falls ago, when he had gotten into the esoteric sciences. One weekend, the Biancatellos went to visit Lydia, and they stopped at the same Italian store Milo visited with the Filantinos years back. Now, being to see Lydia, this kinda gave Milo some nasty flashbacks to the days that they had as when they had dropped Lydia off for the first time. The smell of the dormitory reminded Myla of chamomile tea, which she remembered drinking quite a bit the previous year after some nasty anxiety attacks. This was before Myla realized that it was all his fundamentalism. As for the Italian store, this gave Myla some flashbacks to that particular fall, so 5 years ago, and how it seemed like everything had come out, how he had just came out of quite a nasty funk after quite a distressing summer of uncertainty and some possibly a grim next coming year. Myla remembered how that year turned out to be much better than that summer had predicted. A few weekends later, Chelsea came to Cyberpunk for a visit, and Myla threw a college party for Lydia's college friends. Only there was no alcohol under Myla's watch. Now during that day, Myla and Salvatore had gone over to an Asian store that they just opened up a few weeks ago. Then when Myla got back, he found that Chelsea had already arrived when he was gone. As for the party, this had been quite interesting. Myla met a lot of Lydia's new college friends. Myla liked being the cool guy at the party, even if he did not allow drinks. Otherwise, then the next day, Grandma Pearl came over for breakfast, as this was Margaret's birthday. Margaret had gotten a call from Grandpapa that same morning. The new charisms, back in the realm of the Jinn, the Element, Brother Volition, and Sister Wisdom responded to the Saint Gregory charism's request. This letter confirmed everything that the Saint Gregory charism suspected in doing a major house cleaning. The letter explained this new plan to introduce a series of charisms to teach about the multitude of ethical theories in hopes of clearing house. The letter explained that all ethical theories never get to the core of righteousness, but only clues to the goodness of the dance. On the day of the meeting, Uriyama, the charisms and the church fathers, St. Patrick and the Didache, Bible believers and Sophonims and Magnuses including Melendel, Jebediah, Lance, and Brutus all attended. The Anagrammatrons Gustavet, Dogmatius, Bilius, and Victoria also showed up. They met in the Inanian temple. When Brother Volition and Sister Wisdom arrived, the Jinns all prostrated in prostration. Brother Volition summoned the charism of social psychologist Jonathan Haidt, and Sister Wisdom summoned the charism of recently deceased comedian George Carlin. Sister Wisdom and Brother Volition explained that they had many more charisms to send when the time would come. They also explained that Father Time and Mother Earth had more charisms to send them also. Soon enough, The charisms of George Carlin and Jonathan Haidt showed up. The charism of L. Ray Smith immediately thanked the charism of George Carlin for all his efforts. The Carlin charism was a bit confused, as he knew that in life he had made fun of Christians and cursed out their beliefs. The Smith charism explained that the Carlin charism got people to see how stupid their idols of the accuser was. The Smith charism explained that the kind of Christianity Carlin always made fun of was this pseudo-Christianity that was only influenced by the accuser. Then Brother Volition and Sister Wisdom explained that the George Carlin charism was needed to expose the foolishness behind the assumptions of infunda mullets. Then the charism of Jonathan Haidt was summoned to make sure that those in the community tethered to academics learn the skeleton of the foundations of righteousness. Sister Wisdom explained that the mortals needed to know that there is a way to understand righteousness other than authority. Lydia's first fall. Otherwise, life was running pretty smoothly. Lydia came home over Thanksgiving, and Margaret and Grandma Pearl went up to pick her up before Thanksgiving. That evening, Ray, Milo, Salvatore, and Rob got wings at the hole in the wall that was supposedly good. As to how good this really was had been debatable. Rob got a set of wings that were Jamaican style and had been overly sweet. Or was that Salvatore? Otherwise, Milo had a sleepless night that night due to having a science test the next morning. Now, Milo had been agitated with this professor, as he had given him a 0 on a worksheet due to some assumptions that he cheated. This teacher had no proof, and his conclusions were utterly unfounded or true. All that happened was he had the same answers as some other students, who may have copied him while he was not looking. Since being at Maltech, Milo was aware that professors did not always grade fairly, and often uses their classes to boost their own ego. However, this did not make Milo any more happy. Frankly, the class utterly annoyed Milo, as he knew this class was one he had to take, as he needed a science class, and the teacher made it more like an advanced science class. Plus, this took away studying time he could use for his own major. One thing Milo always found irritating was when he expected to take a class more seriously based on how demanding the teacher was, rather than the class being something he had an interest in and would use it for the future, or could learn something for a career. At this time, Milo had been less interested in school, as his memories of Susewego had been marketed by phoniness. The previous year at Susewego University, Milo compared to living in a paper cutout world. Milo had found that he could not stand his geology class, as it was not part of his major, and the teacher still made the class like it was meant for geology majors. Milo's major had been in art history, so to learn more about architecture from an aesthetic point of view and a historical perspective that he was denied at Maltech. Milo still had not understood that his education at Maltech was not problematic due to engineering, but their lack of teaching in an instructive and skill-based way. All they taught was how to follow directions and take orders. That Monday before Thanksgiving, Margaret and Grandma Pearl went down to Akron to pick Lydia up. As for Thanksgiving, Corey and Olivia made a visit surprise. Kate and Jonathan stayed back as she was in bed rest with the baby on the way. They came just to see Uncle Giorgio, as he was not doing particularly well. Yuriyama and Daxidis' vision. Around this time, Melendo saw the signs, and Mortania's task was ever nearer. As to just what this would entail, Melendo did not know yet. Mortanius had been with Melendo asking if he understood what was happening. Mortanius brings up a vision from the oracle similar to the tonsillectomy, where there was a girl the charge had noticed. Melendel explains that there were further visions, which the uncle is talking with the charge in school. Mortanius explains that this battle is not necessarily a defeat, but some kind of mysterious victory. During the holiday, Yuriyama was summoned back to the oracle. Yuriyama saw a college student in a campus lounge one particularly brutal and dangerous frosty winter night, just trying to find a way to get home due to some unknown danger. This boy accidentally comes across a mysterious door that is supposed to take one to the other side, and only sees a world that resembles the Super Mario game Mario Madness and the Platonic realm of changeless forms. Daxidis saw an unsubstantial video game world where the mortals lived. Scenes could change all different kinds of settings, such as winter forests, cliff houses, plumbing systems, backyard woods, or long-lost houses. Yuriyama immediately summoned Daxidis, Therese, and the charism of George Carlin. The charism of George Carlin was the first to arrive. He takes one look at the vision and makes a commentary about video games. The Carlin charism starts on going about how these 2D games at least made the appearance of a video game. The charism then explains that things were better off before, and people could play a game and still know that it was a game. Then the charism of George Carlin goes on about how these 3D games are like virtual realities, giving the illusion of reality, and that these kids' minds get messed with. Then the charism brings up games like virtual pets that says either get a pet, or he says either get a pet or don't get a pet. There is no point in getting a fake pet that you cannot pet, but still have to take care of. Might as well get a game based on chores like farming. Yoriyama, annoyed, mentions a game like this already exists known as Farmville. Yoriyama asks the Carlin Charism if he had any real input besides video game commentary. The Charism seriously explains that many people cannot tell reality apart from virtual reality, and then explains that there are too many stupid things like people buying video game demonstrations for. Then Daxividus and Therese show up, and they start to understand that those in the Sarkukos community were becoming used to their environment and did not seem to want to leave. According to Therese, Stockholm was still in power, but operating now as a protector instead of a tyrant, choosing to show mercy. Daxividus explained that the Melodico Eudopus was in charge of this place. Yoriyama knew well that Eudopus makes all kinds of offers to those who feel oppressed, and likes to play the role of the caretaker, starting revolutions to destroy anyone deemed to be the oppressor. Daxividus explains that most of the refugees of Eudopus had been under fear-based religion or greedy for profit organizations. Yoriyama tells Daxividus that this vision shows of a world they are living in and can only imagine anything else besides some static realm beyond themselves. Daxividus asks Therese why anyone would want to stay in this realm. Daxividus explained that this realm is so empty and quite phony. Therese explains that for the time being, the mortals stuck in this community have turned in on themselves out of fear of being sucked into the institutions sustained by the Sarkikos ideas. According to Therese, those in the community are so afraid of ever being sucked into the institutions that they have been in this self-protective mode that they fear any more form of transcendence could be a form of manipulation. Daxividus asked Therese if those in the community are afraid of being controlled and don't want to trust anyone besides themselves. Teresa confirms that this is true and believes that their intellect is infallible and gives them this sense of never being at anyone's mercy. Then the Carlin Charism gives the input about Eudopus being like a politician, making big promises but ends up biting off more than he can chew and screwing everything up. Therese explains that Eudopus had given promises of certainty that the religious and business authorities are wrong. The charism of George Carlin tells Therese, Yoriyama, and Daxividus that those in the Sarkikos community need to see this vision. Therese explains that she was already going to show the community the vision that night, but I was not sure it would be too effective. Yoriyama explained that it would be a pretty disturbing sight. Daxividus asked if this will make the community more apprehensive about leaving. Daxividus explains that those in the community will see a world beyond the Sarkikos community as some realms of static forms. Trees explains that in time those held prisoner will neither want to live in these realms, nor a Platonic realm will know surprise, and will have to surrender. The Uneasy Christmas. Early in December, Kate gave birth to her and Corey's third-born, Rowan. As for the holiday season, Milo was not exactly in the greatest of spirits. Milo had been waiting for the holidays since the summer, but now that it was here, it just felt not so magical anymore. Now Milo was looking quite forward to the holiday, but when the time came, he just could not feel in any spirit. Otherwise, Milo was on the 5th book of Harry Potter, and was on the chapter where they had the holiday and Sirius Black being in a good mood. This put Milo in slightest spirit. Otherwise, Milo could not stand all the Hallmark television channel shows. Amira's birthday took place over a final week for Milo. This year, Milo actually remembered, as he had been thinking about Amira again. On the night before Amira's birthday, Milo had a dream that Amira had converted to Assembly of God Pentecostalism. Milo also had some dreams about old McDonald's-style toys, like those old metal playground sets, like with the hamburger jail and the ice cream slide and some other ones. According to some reports, kids got hurt on these old-fashioned metal slides and they ended up chucking them from all McDonald's in favor of the plastic ones. Last one Milo ever remembered seeing had been one time when on the way to visiting Grandpa Clarence in in Orlando on the way. During this time, otherwise in relation to the Assembly of God, Milo is still associating evangelical Christianity, including the Assemblies of God, with radical fundamentalists. Now Milo still went to church, but did not really believe as the Catholics did anymore, or in religion much at all. Actually, organized religion wasn't his forte. That holiday, Uncle Giorgio got progressively worse and passed away a day before New Year's Eve. Milo knew this had happened, as Ray was over at Uncle Giorgio's all day. Then when Ray was home for a little bit, he got the call about Uncle Giorgio not doing so well all of a sudden. Then they got the call and Margaret expresses her condolences. A little while later, Milo hears Lydia crying, and he wished that all that had happened was some type of breakup, as he knew what really happened was much, much worse. That night, Milo went with Lydia, Chelsea, and Emily to the Hibachi restaurant. Chelsea was in town after Christmas. Milo knew that they only asked him to be nice, considering the circumstances. On New Year's, the Biancatellos saw Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. Now Milo really liked this movie so far, and he wished that they would have gone on a little further, but it was what it was. Milo started having some hope that there was something after life, after death, after this. The funeral showing took place on Sunday, and the mass took place on Monday. Monsignor Warburton did the mass, and there was a funeral wake afterwards. Milo was a bit befuddled, considering that his prayers did not seem to work. After the funeral, Lydia was taken back to Akron as her break ended. Over the course of the next few weeks, Milo had many nightmares about the night Uncle Giorgio had passed, and feared this meant something very bad. Milo did some research on dreams and found out that it was normal to have dreams reliving fresh traumas. On Gianni's birthday, Milo went out to dinner with the Fiorentinos and Zia Maria. Otherwise, Milo was getting ready for his next semester with Susuego. During this time, Milo was still playing a video game known as Lego Harry Potter's years 1 through 4. The second calling. The elements summoned the emergency meeting in order to introduce some new charisms. The elements knew well that there was a spirit of statism in the air, particularly of a leftist sort. As to where it was coming from, the elements believed that this should be doing the works of the Fromlegion in making. Then the elements summoned the charisms of the founding fathers, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, and Benjamin Franklin. These charisms were placed under Therese and Daxivic's responsibility, in hopes of awakening those stuck in the Sarkikos realm. Therese was a bit out of sorts, considering that the showing had the vision of the Sarkikos community had not worked out too well. According to the Therese, this door in the vision only reminded one of the prisoners of the love door in the Harry Potter world, and Harry Potter book that was more horrible and wonderful than death. All this did was make his prisoners more afraid of anything they could not understand. The Brother Volition summoned the charism of sociologist Bob Altemeyer, while Sister Wisdom summoned the charism of Baal Meha and Mark Pinsky. They had been given this task to assist in the efforts of the George Carlin and Jonathan Haidt charisms. Sister Wisdom gave these charisms the task to teach the mortals how to reason, in hopes that they could get back in touch with themselves and eventually transcend themselves. Sister Wisdom explained that too many mortals have been bound to this illusion that only institutions have knowledge of truth, and that ordinary people need to be completely instructed by them. Then the elements called and summoned the charism of hospice chaplain and theologian Dr. Boyd Purcell. Mother Earth instructed the charism of Dr. Purcell to make sure his work on spiritual abuse gets out. Mother Earth explains that in Fundamentalists, under the accuser, spread ideas that good good is relative to those in power. Now the charism of Boyd Purcell knew well that such a morality was based on the idea that might made right. As to exactly what made right, no jinn, element, or mortal could possibly understand this on a rational level. The charism of the founding fathers went into the Sarkikos community and been utterly disgusted at the way the Constitution had been so twisted to justify all kinds of intrusions. The charism of Thomas Jefferson started to suspect that there were hypercolos working for Utopias, but he had no clue. The only suspect that the charism of Thomas Jefferson had was the hypercolo Whippu. By this time, Whippu had escaped from the gin prison after a riot. The charism calls for the assistance of Melendel, who had seen the work of Whippu, and he recognized much of the scapegoating going on. Melendel always suspected that Whippu would take on a different form this time, but he was utterly clueless to where she would be. The political semester. Milo's third semester at Susawego was pretty eventless. Milo's classes were Art and Society, Introduction to Cinema, and Research Writing. Art and Society along with Cinema were Monday evening classes for Milo, and his writing class was online. Milo only took the classes so he would not be at Susawego for 2 days a week. Milo was still in that mindset that he could not handle any of the imperfections, and was still quite turned off from the school due to not having experienced too much belonging at this school. Milo worked on a research paper on the sociology of Disney. Milo's focus on Disney had been wholly rational, that he nearly reduced the movies to being nothing more than political moralisms. Milo's ideas were that all the movies represented were some form of authority, and all villains represented were someone from his hate list. Milo saw Ursula as a saleswoman, Gaston as a jock, Jafar as a politician, Scar as a communist, Governor Radcliffe as a corporate CEO, Frollo as a fundamentalist, Hades as a demon, and Shan Yu as a terrorist. As it was, Milo completely neglected the transcendent themes. As for classes, Milo was still not a huge fan. Milo only took the Monday night classes, as we know, to only be at Susawego 1 day a week. When it came to cinema classes, Milo only took the class because the professor was an Elamite woman. Frankly, Milo did not find his teacher to be very good at teaching due to her heavy accent and fairly silly lesson plans. The only thing Milo learned is that movies have political agendas. At least a lot of them do these days. As for Art and Society, Milo worked on a project of finding postmodern architecture throughout Cyberpond. Azia's vision. One glorious evening, Azias had been summoned to the Oracle Temple, and saw the following vision. A boy is working out at the gym with his friend. This boy sees a girl whom he had a crush on from years ago, when he had been away for a while. This friend points out this girl out loud, letting off leading up to a little bit of embarrassment. This then leads to a flashback of being in the front of a school and some black guy telling him to be careful of some evil afoot. Then this dream turns into seeing this boy and girl seemingly running into each other at basketball arenas and then a country southern bar. After seeing the vision, Aegeus relays that he had what we had seen with Melendil and Lance. Aegeus offered to share his findings with Brutus, but he simply was too busy to be concerned. Aegeus had been a bit suspicious about why Brutus had been too busy to be concerned with other duties, other than his role as Synexit. Soon enough, the charism of Boy Purcell arrives and shares that he has made many inroads and has successfully reached out to the charge. Melendil asks the charism of Boy Purcell if the charge is back in battle. The charism explains that Mortanius had guided the charge right to him after his uncle passed away. The charism recognized that much of what had happened to him with fundamentalism, and how similar the experience had been with others, and how this form of abuse seemed so inescapable, which he had written in his book. The spring and summer. A few weeks before Easter, Milo skipped his cinema class in order to go to a Passover Seder at a conservative synagogue in which St. Timothy's invited them to. Milo had thought quite highly of Judaism, as he saw them as a tolerant and therefore non-dogmatic and open-minded people. The tolerance of the Jews had stumped Milo, as he was under the impression that the Old Testament was a horribly intolerant book, full of vindictive punishment on petty matters and constant violence, as compared to the New Testament. As for the Seder, this had been an interesting experience. The Seder was done at a conservative synagogue cafeteria and presented by a rabbi with a heavy Brooklyn accent. During this same time, Milo did a small tour of to find some postmodern architecture in Cider Pond. Milo's choices were St. Timothy's Church and Nature Center by the water, Cider Pond High, and the library, along with some other Catholic church in town. As for Easter, this had been an interesting time. The night before Easter, Milo had a weird dream about Grandma Gladys's house and some old toys from the 1920s. This had been the first Easter without Uncle Giorgio. Otherwise, all the kids showed up at Uncle Leo's for the party.
And here I'll stay. And here I'll stay. Here I'll stay.
By the end of the semester, Lydia returned home. When Milo had been done with this year, he found himself less than a fan of school now, as he did not feel connected in the slightest. One thing Milo hated of all about school now was final weeks. Milo felt like his parents had become quite authoritarian in forcing him to study the whole dang day. Milo had realized that college was not all it was cracked up to be. The only good thing Milo could say about Susawego was that it was not intrusive like Maltech was. If there was one thing that makes Milo uncomfortable, it is these reciprocal relationships like Maltech offered. The day after Lydia returned home, Milo was having quite an irritating day, as it was with final weeks. Ray had Milo concentrating on his studying. Then in the morning, Milo went to a Kingdom Hall with Vito for a meeting. Frankly, this meeting was long and boring. Milo found the Jehovah's Witnesses were a very different bunch when they got together, as opposed to their regular visits. Now Milo felt a little bit pressured at the meeting to join them again. Milo did not think this was going to happen, and did not want to be every Sunday morning going to these 3-hour meetings. After the meeting, when Milo got home, Salvatore asked him to get donuts with him and Matt. Now Milo was a bit stressed about getting his finals done. Well, they were at the now Milo told Salvatore that he would only go if they had to get back at a certain time so Milo could study. Now Salvatore did say yes, but Salvatore had never been one to take studying too seriously. One thing that always quite irked Milo about Salvatore was that he could easily memorize anything he learned, all the stuff he learned in school, to know what to put on the tests and tell them what they wanted to hear. Milo, on the other hand, felt like he had to work hard just to remember a bunch of bull crap, while Salvatore just slid by so easily. Well, at the donut shop, Salvatore would not leave despite Milo needing to get home. Then Milo got extremely irritable when Salvatore decided to get gas on the way home. Milo felt this extremely annoying, as he did not appreciate being kept waiting just because Salvatore could not wait until after he was back at the house to get gas.
I'm malicious, mean and scary.
When Milo got home, he checked his Facebook, and Lydia asked Milo what he was doing on Facebook when he should have been studying. Milo then asked Lydia why the fuck she cares. Now Lydia did not take too well to this, of course. This was in fact because Milo just set Milo off. Frankly, Lydia did not like this in the slightest. By this time, Milo was ready to be finished with his current classes to start summer vacation. Shortly before the summer, after school had ended, Margaret was in Toledo for a business trip, which normally took place in Tampa. By this time, the Biancatellis found out that they were invited to Uncle Wayne's graduation party in Atlanta. Milo was not overly thrilled about this, as he feared that the South would be full of obnoxious Bible thumpers. As for Mother's Day weekend, the Biancatellis and Grandma Pearl went up to Toledo to visit Margaret. Milo had not been to Toledo since he went with the Filantinos right before starting with Maltech.
Oh, I'd like to quit and be a florist. Brenda does interior design.
For dinner, the Biancatellas, Margaret and Grandma Pearl, had dinner at the hotel, which was this classy five-star restaurant. Now they were willing to spend a little higher since it was a holiday for mothers.
No. Sorry, boys. I don't say.
Early in the summer, Grandma Rose's brother, Uncle Victor, passed away after years of failing health. Milo only found out via Aunt Diane right before Memorial Day weekend. Over the summer, Milo was a bit cynical at times. Milo was not particularly fond of organized religion and wondered why people believed in these overly dogmatic systems and could not get in with his program and understand that there is no sky dictator punishing humanity. Milo knew that from experience from the years earlier that there was something much bigger than the silly fundamentalist model. Over the early summer, Eustace had his graduation party. Otherwise, Ben came in town over that month and invited Milo, Salvatore, Eustace, and Rob out to lunch at a Chinese restaurant. That same weekend, Margaret's friend Tessa came and decided upon with her daughter. By this time, the plans were made to spend the week a few days in Myrtle Beach and then head over to Atlanta. A few weeks later, Milo and Lydia and Salvatore went over to Soaktown. Now, Soaktown had not been so appealing for Milo that day, and for some reason he felt a bit off about being there. As to what, Milo suspected that maybe because he knew he would be leaving for Atlanta in a couple days. Donnell's establishments. Oscar and Donnell had a long discussion and agreed that within the upcoming days it would be time to reintroduce some new television shows back to the Earthlings. Oscar had seen over the year how the antisocial tendencies were still getting worse and were still quite traumatized by relationships to even consider befriending anyone. According to Donnell, many mortals had become quite cynical about relationships in general, and saw them as a burden where one was forced to be something else just to please others. Oscar explains to Donnell that mortals often expect that earthly relationships to have the same perfections reserved for the dance alone. Oscar explained that earthly relationships, whether friendships, romances, family or connections, can become so transcendent that it can become mistaken for the dance. When these relationships are imperfect in any way, this can seem like the dance has turned against the individual. Donnell asks Oscar if Pyrrhus knew all this and purposely set this up. Oscar explained that the imperfections Pyrrhus exploited created these relationships that could be quite conditional. Oftentimes, something in a friendship like a disagreement or cancellation occurs, and this creates a system where absolute perfection is demanded. All this did was create these demanding relationships based on conditional keeping of accounts leading to refusal to accept the other as other, betrayal, domination, or utility. Durrell had some idea to get those under-electivists to see the way Patuma had some dangerous influences. Durrell had many under Patuma still under some emotional attachments to parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, or anyone who resembled such roles, and that they had been mistaken for the dance. Oscar explained that growing up, children often see these figures as possessing the perfection reserved only for the dance, and become quite distraught when such figures show their imperfections. Oscar explains that teenagers begin to realize that such figures are imperfect, but still long for the perfect parental figure that only the dance can be. Accordingly, Patuma still preys on this primordial wish and keeps the mortals tethered in an unhealthy fashion to any such figures despite imperfections. The resentment about such imperfections manifests in hostility towards any stranger, such as a new teacher, boss, or anyone taking on parental roles in a grossly imperfect way, and in a foreign way too. Oscar gives the examples of hostility shown on college campuses at any speaker expressing an exclusive point of view, and these people hear the lecturing elder pushing their own imperfections. Durrell's ideas were to introduce some wholesome family shows. Around this time, the retired Parabdi Alexander also joined in their assistance and suggested shows with pretty girls. Alexander explains that this will lure people in, and Durrell then sees that this will assist the mortals to be able to see the girls as something more than mere objects to lust over and possess. Oscar explained his plans to make sure some fantasy-style shows are re-established. According to Oscar, this sense of transcendence will give the mortals a sense of something beyond the annoying watch of the archons.